I'm so right, as usual. So the score was 29-13. Now, who played? Who played in the Super Bowl? It was the Seahawks versus the Patriots. And for those of you who have been paying attention, I've been saying that the hawk and the falcon are interchangeable, basically, in terms of describing the Royal African Falcon Martial Order, but it's actually the falcon. So it was the Seahawks, right? The sea of people, right? Like in Revelation 17, the good sea versus the bad sea, the polluted waters versus, the good holy waters versus the polluted waters. And the patriots, people who blindly follow the government, right? When we think of patriot these days, we think of people who blindly follow the government who label themselves patriots. Now, let's think about this here. The score was 29. The 2 corresponds to the B and the 9 to the I. You get by. To 13. The 1 corresponds to the A, the 3 to the C. So you get by A, C. Now, as I pointed out with the Super Bowl, right, the letters can be interchangeable, the vowels. So super can become rape scrambled. And by AC can become Ebo C. So they want the bisexual, A meaning alpha, C, and they want, that they're insulting the Ebo tribe. And they're saying that they want, because the Ebo can also be Obi, can refer to me, King Heart, Essence Center, Temple Core is what Obi means in Ebo. And in martial arts, Kira Obi means black belt. It refers to the top martial arts ever possible, who they knew would be of Ebo descent. It has to do with who has what kind of brain function, who's shaped like what and why, and so on and so forth. Who has what spirit, what cultivation. So just like in ancient Egypt, where they try to get the pharaoh to do what they said, right, by offering him incentives, what have you. Initially, it was unheard of for them to try to use coercion and blackmail and bribery, because Pharaoh was a martial art king. Over time, you get these sissy pharaohs who gave into pressure, what have you. And Pharaoh was superimposed on the idea of the Son of God. The first Pharaoh, Narmer, may very well have been, and I often think of it as that he was a valid representative of God, a valid top martial artist, what have you. So let's look at this thing. The word LGBT, right? The L again can be, the lowercase L can be a capital I. You get GBT. So you can get IG. Another one way to spell Ebo is IGBO, where the G is silent. Another is IBO, the other is EBO. So you get the IGBT with the LGBT, where the L can be an I, right? So it's almost spelled exactly the same way as the word Ebo. And we see this time and time again in the wordplay. Sometimes you get these similar words in the letters that they have different tell us something. For example, Ebo, IBO, and Israel, ISREAL. When you combine the two, you get, and you remove the I's rather, you get the Obi, meaning king, and you get reals, right? The real is the Obi. With Ebo and LGBT, you get the T and the O, you get the two. And the O and the T, the O is a reproductive cycle, and the T is the feminine suffix. Now, for those of you who are still skeptical because you're insane, maybe this is your first video, what have you, explain to me why Bad Bunny was the performer, somebody who seems very LGBT. When I looked it up, it said that he wasn't LGBT, but he's an ally who takes on their style and their spirit, what have you. And in the Super Bowl interview, one of them, he was wearing a gray beanie that's similar to the gray beanie I wear every day out here in the Detroit area in Michigan, and a gray jacket that's fairly similar as well. I'll post pictures of these if I remember. And in another video that had to do with him, it was like this Puerto Rican grandma or something. She's wearing a red bandana. And I recently, maybe a month ago, made a video about the 7 Miles Bloods. And for those of you who have seen my story playlist, I used to be in a organization that is best described as a subset of the Greater Crip moniker, the Greater Crip idea, because different Crip gangs don't all get along, what have you. But to make a long story short, I used to be a Crip, and it goes back to the word scripture, which is a play on words for Crip's root. And before I knew anything about this wordplay stuff, okay, that was something I identified as. I used to say that Crip stands for Christ, rest in peace, and community revolution in progress. And I was a revolutionary who started my own faction of the Crips, and was aligned to and rolling with various Crip gang members. A Compton Crip from Acacia Block, Compton Crip, as the story goes, Seven Trees Crips, West Side Crips, okay, and other Crip sets in California. And I do not approve of gang banging, what have you. Okay, the story for another day, right? Crip gang sets, right? The set, right, which goes back to settler, set the stage. The word whites is a plain word for white set. I can go on and on, right? Set's Greek counterpart is Zeus, Zeus and the rape of Europa, and why their culture is what it is, and so on and so forth. So there's that. Also the bunny, right? The bunny refers to, it can refer to the Playboy bunny, it can refer to Bugs Bunny, and notice that ICE, they're playing a sick game where ICE and these protesters are clashing. And they're both in the wrong, just like in the cartoon where Bugs Bunny provokes, Yosemite Sam, Elmer Fudd, and they're kind of like these, conservative types, and they're quick to shoot. Okay, so you see what they're doing is very, very sick, and people shouldn't be rolling with it. So obviously the solution is the soul you shun. For those of you who are still not convinced, you might think, hey, why does it have to do with this guy? Okay, so I'm the son of two doctors. My father's a brain surgeon. That already sets me apart, because there weren't many black brain surgeons when my father became a brain surgeon. And he came here from Africa penniless and worked his way up. But what's more important than that is my father is from the Igbo royal family, from the Skywalker cult center village. Okay, Eri, right, in Egypt is known as Haro Eri. And they messed up the description there on every site I come across, because they gay wash history, how that goes, right? Jewish wash, white wash, gay wash, token minority, kind of Freemason, Boule wash, what have you. So Eri from the Igbo Center, and Haro Eri, also where you get the word sorcery, and a lot of these Eri words. And in Greek mythology, their god of war is Ares, A-R-E-S. And they also have an E-R-I-S, which is also how you spell Eri, but you say it differently, who's said to be a deity of chaos and discord. And the Jews were said to have worshipped Dionysus by a lot of historians, who was a young Zeus, okay, which puts him in the Greek mythology system. And the pagan deities that they worshipped in the Middle East were overlapping with the Greek mythology system. So in the Bible it says, woe to you who call good evil and evil good, and it goes on and on about how the Jews keep doing the wrong thing. So the language they naturally speak is a language of hypocrisy and evil, according to the prophets in the Bible. And that's why in Revelation 17 it points that out. That's why Jesus' language was not familiar to them. We see that in the New Testament. He says, why don't you understand what I'm saying? Because they call good evil and evil good, and reflects that in the word for Ra, for example, which means evil. When Ra in the Egyptian mythology system stands for the sun, which symbolizes God, which is also touched on in Genesis 41:45 and Psalm 19. In Genesis 41:45, Joseph marries Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, who was the high priest of Ra. In Ra's cult center, Ionu, also known as Heliopolis to the Greeks, okay, and On. And in Psalm 19, the sun is said to be the symbol of God, and the bridegroom, who's said to be the champion. We connect that to Psalm 18, the chapter before. We see it's a martial art champion, as the Lord is said to train the king's hands for battles and to give mighty victories to the king. Martial art victories, single combat, David versus Goliath, the Psalm of David, what have you. So when you look at this and you look at my top martial arts challenge I made in 2013, I've been a grand champion martial artist since 1997. You see that this is not a coincidence. I'm the one person on the planet who can say that they're Christ, who can say they're the top martial artists ever possible, due to tech, breeding, cheating, generational ill-gotten gains, ruling out people in the future, it's ever possible. We can see that martial arts have pinnacled, martial is marital scrambled, I, Christ, and the bridegroom. I can go on and on and on. So when you look at the abundance of evidence, it points to me. And what does it mean to be delusional is to ignore the abundance of evidence. Not when you're the top martial arts ever logically and universally and in the eyes of God, and you have an overwhelming amount of evidence and people gaslight you. That's what it means to be right in a world full of bitches. But what it means to be delusional is to ignore all of that evidence and be tail-tucked like the government and the governing class and the churches and the mosques and the synagogues and all these, liberals and conservatives, Democrats, Republicans, libertarians, all these groups out there, to be a complete punk, a controlled opposition lemming, muppet worm, who ignores the evidence slips into a state of denial, right? They talk about white denial. Well, the whole country is extremely whitewashed, and the main gay movements come from whites and Jews. I'm sure you all see it that way, right? Greece, France, okay, San Francisco, Hollywood is a bunch of black people exerting power, whites and Jews. So, you're all suffering from forms of white and Jewish and LGBT denial. A picture of my shoes real quickly here. I can't wear any of the shoes except for the blue Nikes in that picture. And it was like that when I was in California. In fact, I'm wearing some very messed up old white Cortez right now. Even though I have white Cortez in that picture, I can't wear that because there's some kind of substance on it and they use some kind of technology to mess up my body if I wear them. And so that factors in. They might use those shoes in the future. I thought I throw that in there. I couldn't find any yellow shoes, all yellow shoes that were to my liking. So I bought those Pumas. Um, the light blue for the Cortez is hard to match, but I wanted people to know that, what my true colors are, to show my true colors, because even though I'm not an occultist, I don't use colors like an occultist does. I want them to know, yes, I'm the Skywalker. And it's a little bit strange, almost a little corny, but it gets the message across. Just like the bumper stickers. It was like just a touch corny or something in a sense because they're bumper stickers, but it did a good job getting the message out there. So the reason I wore gray wasn't because um, I'm magically neutral, right? Neutral is a play on words for new troll. That's part of how they get you people. You just go along with it and you're a neutral. You're cultivating complicity with evil. See Revelation 18, it says, come out of the system. Not put your head down and be depressed and join them, or try to be happy and join them. So I'm able to wear that gray beanie instead of it causing me to break out or messing me up in some way. And I'm able to wear that jacket, which was a jacket that I got from my father. And so I don't entirely match, but I'm able to wear the clothes, and it's very cold out here. It gets like, I don't know, 10 degrees or something. It's very, there's snow.